back to Module 3.3, What to Do in Times of Estrangement, and looking at biblical examples of estrangement. We talked a little bit about this in the other section of Module 3.2. We looked at the importance of gaining support when you are in an estranged situation, when you have exhausted your ability to connect with your family member. Maybe you've apologized, maybe you've tried to have meetings and they are stonewalling and they refuse to talk, they refuse to take any of your calls, and they are avoiding you. That creates a lot of emotional tension and a lot of emotional vulnerability. But you have to remember that you can only control you. And while you're so used to connecting and wanting to connect, and you see what is happening and you value family at that moment, the other person does not. That's a hard pill to swallow, that people that raised you, people that grew up with you, are now choosing to be separate from you, to make you live without their support, and to send you a message that you're wrong, you're not worthy, or any of those things, or maybe just on the innocent level, you don't have enough love and support and acceptance for me, so I'm leaving because I'm guilty and shamed. It's still an affront to your ego. Remember, we talked about ego responding? And something in you wants to correct this and send a message that I'm not that way. This is not who I am. Let's work it out. But remember, relationships are two-way streets. When someone has decided to stonewall and to cut you off or not to communicate, they have turned their back on the relationship. You can try to chase them, but the more you chase them, the further they go away. So in accepting that they are not choosing to be in relationship with you can cause anxiety and depression, depending on the strength of the relationship in the past. It is so heart-wrenching for children whose parents have cut them off, because their parents were here when they got here, and that was their sole source of security and support. So they feel a great re-injury of abandonment and of disconnection and fear and sadness, overwhelming sadness that can be debilitating, and that could cause your immune system to just freeze. I mean, your autonomic nervous system to just freeze. And when that happens, you're just stuck. You're stuck in the wanting, the needing, and the desiring of the relationship. And you're lonely, and you're in regret and the what ifs, and you begin to ruminate. And those are all things that are not helpful in the progress of moving forward and dealing with the estrangement. Maybe you thought you'd never have to deal with estrangement. Oh, that would never happen to me and my family. Any family member can experience estrangement, especially because it's so popular in our current day. In time past, people valued families, and they valued unity, and they encouraged unity. And there was a sense of consciousness that you would feel if you were not connected to your family. Family was everything. For some people, family is nothing. And so we have transitioned to the modern age of family being an option, but not necessarily something that you need or something to fight for. So in looking at that, we have to accept that accepting the reality is painful, it's mentally exhausting, and it could impair your health, your psychology, your emotional health, your spiritual health. It can throw everything off balance, because remember, in a system, when one thing changes, everything changes. So the absence of that person, or the strain and the dis-ease in the relationship, causes dis-ease in you until you're able to work on controlling what you can control. So therapy is very valuable when people are dealing with estrangement, because you need to process your thoughts and your emotions, and you need to be able to look at the reality of what is, what may have caused it, and to challenge any distorts that you might have around guilt and shame if you set boundaries and now people are leaving the relationship. You need to have an unbiased opinion to help you sort through your emotions and bring sobriety to your emotions. That person can be a therapist, that person can be a pastor, or that person can be a mature, trusted friend. But you have to be able to talk about it. You should not attempt to handle estrangement by yourself. It's embarrassing, yes, to say that my kids aren't talking to me or my siblings aren't talking to me, because it feels like you've done something wrong. Because who wouldn't talk to their mother? Who wouldn't talk to their child? Who wouldn't talk to their siblings? You must have did something wrong. So there's an element of shame that comes with the truth of estrangement in your family. And most families like to present well, and you have to confess, this is what's going on in my family. There is a breakdown, and that we are not the family that everyone thinks we are, possibly. So in getting that therapy, getting that pastoral support, getting that friendship support, if you need to cry, if you need to mourn the loss of the relationship, that's 100% healthy. Do that, because there's a process of estrangement that needs to happen, and it is the same process of grief. Initially, like I said, you're going to be in denial. Not me. This is just a little attitude they're having. Oh, they'll get back to their senses. And so you don't accept the reality that the relationship is broken and that there's estrangement. And then after you accept it and you're shocked and you're in denial or shock, and then comes sadness. You need to be able to grieve what you're losing or what you've lost. But our society make you feel like people are disposable. And I have friends and I have other family members. I don't need you. And the truth is, we need each other. Everybody needs everybody, because God put us here together. So God knew what we needed when he gave us our families. So your disposing of your family member is disposing of God's gift to you, saying, I don't need that. I can find something else. It's a direct rejection of what God gave you. And we like to do that so that we don't feel any emotions about the relationship ending. So we try to find fault. Well, they didn't do anything for me anyways, and they were always a headache, and child, my stress level is free now, and I'm glad they're not around. But all that's doing is compensating for the pain. And if you're ever going to be healthy and dealing with the loss of a relationship in the family or any relationship, you have to be able to grieve the good and the bad. You have to be able to just look at what you're losing. But usually we look at the bad things to try to make us feel better. Like, I'm better than that. I'm coming into people who celebrate me. I'm going into my next season. I don't need my family. Family ain't all it's supposed to be. Families change. All of that chitter chatter talk of unhealthy people, it can get in your system and cause your healing process to be delayed. But you must go through the grieving process for change and for healing. So after you're sad and you're honest and you are able to cry, mourn, and do those steps, the next step that has to happen is anger. You have to allow yourself to be angry that this is an injustice. If there's unfairness, if someone stonewalled you, if someone ghosted you, if someone just left the relationship unfairly and left you in a position of unfinished business, a parent, you get to be angry about that. You get to be angry that the person didn't have enough respect to talk things out. The person didn't value you enough to talk things out. That should make you angry, because anger is a symbol of something is not right. It is a check in the balance system. It is the red light of the right system. It's the red light of the righteous system in your values. And when something is wrong, anger shows up to say, this is not right. I don't like how I'm being treated. And so it is a protest. You should have an internal protest called anger. And you cannot move forward in your healing process. You'll just be stuck. You'll put the healing process on ice, and you'll continue to loop and ruminate and continue to share your story of how you were mistreated over and over and over. It's like going to court every day and pleading your case and pleading your case. And you will be trapped in this litigation of, I was mistreated, until you allow yourself to be angry. After you're angry, the next step is acceptance. What can you do about it? Well, you really can't do anything about it. You can't. You can't make people listen to you. You can't make people gain compassion or value the relationship because it's choice. So it's accepting the vulnerability of the fact that my family is falling apart. My parents aren't speaking to me. My siblings aren't speaking to me. I'm not speaking to my parents. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it because change is not an option. And I can't live in this dysfunction. That vulnerability is, it is sad, and it hurts you to realize that I'm stuck in a situation that I didn't choose necessarily, and I want better, but there's nothing I can do. There's nothing. I've done everything. I've done apologizing, reaching out. I've done all of that. I hope you did all that, and I hope that you try to mend the breach. And then after you accept, this is just what it is, and there's nothing I can do about it, then you can come to the resolve of, what can I do about it? Because there's always something you can do about a I can't do anything situation. And that what is control you. You get to control your response. You get to control the things that are controllable, which are the things that you can do in the relationship. Like you're in therapy, that's you helping yourself and doing what you can do. You going through the process of grief and loss, that's what you can do, You accepting the reality in the serenity prayer. Because the fine line is, Lord, help me to accept the things that I cannot change and give me courage to change the things I can and give me wisdom to know the difference, because I don't want to be chasing the rabbit for the rest of my life or feeling remorse for the rest of my life. They have decided to go on. I would like to go on with my life. I want my conscience to be clear. I want my health. I want to be a person who doesn't harbor bitterness and anger, but I want to have a full life. I want to honor that I miss the people who are gone, but I also want to honor the life that I still have. You get to honor the life that you still have, and you get to encourage people to honor the life that they still have. It's a dialect. While you honor the life you still have, you can still miss the people who are not in it. It's like when people physically leave Earth and the relationship changes. You still love them, but you miss them, right? And you get to honor that. I still love you. You're across town. I refuse to be engaged in the negativity because of quantum physics. We're still related. And if I engage in the anger, it's going to connect to pain. But if I let go and do it in love, at least that's going to heal me and bring me some oxytocin. Because the only thing that can heal pain, emotional pain, is love and good vibes and good emotional states, right? So then you look around and you continue to build your support system. After you've gone to therapy, worked through the process of grief, done reality and radical acceptance and the serenity prayer, you continue to build your support system. But the rebuilding of your support system and the building of the support system that's left, you're going to build better. You're going to build with the knowledge that you learned from the broken relationship, and you're going to be better, and you're going to set boundaries earlier, and you're going to keep enforcing them, and you're going to love, and you're going to look for reciprocity, and you're going to do all the things that you need to do and that you learned from the relationship that is estranged. And you're going to build safe relationships and protect yourself and protect other people, but you're not going to try to replace the people who have left. You can't replace a parent. You can't replace a sibling because every other relationship is different. And that's the problem with estrangement. People feel like parents are disposable, family members are disposable, and they're not. You only get one mother, one father. The rest are mother images and father images. Or if you're young, they can be a father or mother to you. But in estranged relationships, then you can look for mentors and support, but you don't have to find that mother figure because guess what's going to happen? You're going to be triggered. You're going to have all those issues of trust again. So the best recommendation for that is not to try to replace people who are gone, but to build healthy relationships with the people who are there and build a safe place for people who are coming in. That's the best case scenario. You celebrate what you have left. Hold closely the people who are left. Appreciate the people who are left. Learn how to use communication and skills that can help you to foster a healthy environment for the people who are left. What do you have left? Instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on who and what is left and maximize those skills in the relationships. And if in estrangement, you stay willing to negotiate, keep your mindset willing to negotiate, willing to talk, open to adjustments if someone wants to come back. Don't block them and not take their calls because you're going to now retaliate and you're defensive. No, you can leave the door open. You can keep your heart clean by wishing them well and praying for them and just not sending negative energy their way and keeping your mind open to the possibility if they want to come back or not. But don't live by the phone. Don't live by the door. Keep going on with your life, but leave the possibility open. Be willing to negotiate. Prepare yourself to be willing to meet them in the middle. Now let's talk about what the Bible says about estrangement. Yeah, the Bible has something to say about estrangement. It has a lot to say about estrangement, actually. And we see the first disruption of the relationship of Adam and God, and then Adam and Eve, and then Adam and self. And so it cascaded by their rebellion. And we see it with Cain and Abel. And the fact that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, they had a new boundary, and there was a new type of relationship, which shows us that God doesn't completely destroy their relationship, but he put some modification and adaptations to it. And now they're outside of Eden, because Eden is that perfect place of fellowship where boundaries are kept and God and man are one. So in that way, they are estranged from God. They're not as close as they were, but God is still raining on them and preparing a Savior to save them. But the relationship looks different. There is a gap, So God models that for us. And then the next estrangement we look at is when Cain was selfish and he killed Abel. He was estranged. He was a dangerous person who didn't observe family or boundaries. Selfishness is dangerous. So God had to banish him from the community for the safety and the well-being of other people. And sometimes that happens. You can love people. God still loved Cain, but he was not safe anymore. Some people are not safe. They won't repent. They won't change. And if given an opportunity, they'll violate again. They don't see themselves as needing to apologize or change their behavior. And they become destructive to the unit. The one bad apple spoils the whole batch. And sometimes you have to remove the person for the safety of the others. And that happens, I think, we can see even in Noah's day, like it vexed God that the people were so evil, and that it talks about how their intentions were evil every day. So he sent the flood, because it's hard for God, who loves everyone, to watch a community, a family dismantle itself and to kill and to harm and to hurt. And I think he can tolerate the drinking, the sexual immorality, some, but the pride and the selfishness, that's what got Sodom and Gomorrah in trouble. The homosexuality was a byproduct of their pride and their selfishness. But God knows selfishness destroys community. So he banished and estranged Cain from his family. And then we see estrangement again between Jacob and Esau, because Jacob lied, cheated, stole Esau's birthright. Even though he tricked him into selling his birthright for soup, it was still trickery. Him and his mother had a plan, and they executed the plan, which caused betrayal. So we see betrayal, favoritism, comparison, everything. And that erupted, and it eroded the relationship between the brothers. The brothers' relationship was already fragmented, because if he loved his brother, he would have told his mom, I'm not doing that to my brother. I love my brother. We're one. We're one. I'm not doing that. We've got to pray to God. There's got to be a better solution. I'm not going to lie and steal from my brother. But because she was willing to lie and to steal from her son, she modeled the way of interacting with family members. And so there was estrangement. The estrangement started before it started, because she was estranged from Esau, in a sense, and from her husband. And Jacob was estranged from his brother and his dad, in a sense, because when you're close to people, you don't lie to them and you don't steal from them. So there was estrangement. And so after he stole the birthright, of course he had to go on the run, because the birthright was everything. That was the inheritance. That meant so much in the family system, and he stole it. He literally stole it. So he went on the run because his life was in danger. And eventually that caused that disruption in relating. Remember, I talked about how issues as a child develop, and then when you're an adult, they continue or get bigger. So Esau eventually called for Jacob. So we see that he eventually wanted to reconcile, and they eventually did reconcile. And then we see the prodigal son, that example of estrangement. That's entitlement. When you're entitled, you always feel like, give me my stuff. I deserve this. And that caused an estrangement because he didn't value the relationship with his father. He valued what he can get from the father. After people get what they get from you and they can't get anything else, sometimes they'll leave the relationship. He reduced his father to material wealth. He didn't say, I want my money and I'm staying here. He said, I want my money, my inheritance, and he left. He left the relationship. They were estranged. Parents, your children get of age, they take all that you gave them, and sometimes they don't want to be in relationship with you anymore. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And you're not alone in that. You're going to need the grace, and you're going to need the skills that I described earlier to deal with that pain of betrayal and rejection and exploitation. Yes, parents can be exploited, even though their job is to provide, but they do more than provide. They love you, and you're supposed to reciprocate and be thankful and show them your appreciation. In the case of the prodigal son's father, he was exploited, simply exploited. The son didn't want to give anything, and after he got what he needed, he left. And he had to wonder how the son was doing. And he had to wonder if the son was going to come back. But he kept hope in his heart. He didn't get bitter. He followed the God model. And that's what God does to us. That's what God did to Adam and Eve. Instead of being angry, he was willing to come back and talk to them and listen after they fell. So the prodigal son's father showed up until the prodigal himself ran out of money. Imagine that. Came to himself and was willing to come back. It takes time for people to come to themselves. And when they come to themselves, they can appreciate what they had. Sometimes estrangement leaves a window for people to look back on what they had and appreciate who they had and what they had. And usually that doesn't happen if they're replacing people. But when they become emotionally empty and when they become emotionally dry and when their resources deplete and they see that nobody else is coming to love them in the way that the Father loved them, and then they can really appreciate, because out of his own mouth, he admitted that even my Father's servants eat better than me. I'm eating with the pigs, and I'm not supposed to be around the pigs. I'm Jewish. We don't work with unclean things. But he was reduced to eating pig food. And that caused him to remember that, why am I estranged? Why am I not living in my good Father's house, right? So he goes back, and we know the story. He's chose another lifestyle of independence initially. So parents, beware. Your children may choose another lifestyle, whether it's alternative lifestyle, where there's drinking and rioting and doing drugs and not being spiritual, or just hanging out with gangs. That causes estrangement. And you have to remember they rejected your values. Yes, they rejected you, but it's more about your value system. They don't want to be in your world that you created. They want to create a chaotic world. They want to create a world that they can live in and that you're not comfortable in. And that becomes a reality. We personalize it, but if we unpack it, some of estrangement is that people don't want to live in a world of order or a world that you created. They want to live in a world that they create. And you wish them Godspeed with a broken heart and accept that God allows choice, and so should we. It's going to break your heart. You're going to miss them. But at the end of the day, they're just not rejecting you. They just don't accept the world that you're creating. And they don't have to. Everyone gets to decide what type of world they want. And the people who want the same world usually end up building the same world together. So the prodigal son, again, he wanted his independence with his father's money. Go figure. Don't kids want independence with their family, with their parents' resources? They want the parents to support their independence. You do not support someone's independence. That's called dependence. If you want independence, you have to support your own independence. And so that was a model of what happens in estrangement. Then we see estrangement in humanity again with David's house. Absalom and Abner. And when it came to the point, I think I'm saying his name right, if that's the right son. I just know the one son who raped Tamar, his sister. That caused a split in the family. Abuse usually does, because some people are saying, shh, don't tell anybody. Some people are saying, scream on the mountain, let's get revenge. So that splits the family right in half. David's house was split, and that was a promise. Sometimes estrangement is a generational pattern or a curse that's on a family from God. Because you broke up someone's house, you slept with someone's husband, your house is going to be broken up. You broke up a family, so your family won't be together. And sometimes it takes years to get the blessings back on your family, but you need to recognize through genealogy, what is the history of our family and all of this estrangement? Are we living under just generational consequences because someone made a bad decision and now it is the route of our family? And are we making the same choices, and can we make different choices? So David, by killing Uriah and taking Bathsheba, God told him that, there's going to be violence in your house. And there's also perversion in his house, or a lack of sexual restraint, because one of his sons rapes his half-sister. And that causes estrangement between the sister and the brother who did it and the other brother. And it also caused an estrangement between the daughter and David, because the sister didn't, I know it were technicalities, she couldn't go back to her father's house because she was impure, but she went to her brother's house and lived there the duration of her life, and he protected her. He eventually got revenge by killing the brother, and so that's more division. The family was just full of division. And then the sons tried to overthrow the kingdom, and David was not in relationship with his sons, and the brothers killed another brother. Just estrangement, division. It happens in families, that families would even want to physically kill one another. Remember, the first murder was Cain killed Abel. So estrangement and lack of love loss is common among the human race, unfortunately. We see that there's an estrangement with unbelievers today in God. Everyone has not accepted his forgiveness. Not everyone has repented and are in fellowship with God in relationship. And so that's an estrangement against the very God who provides everything. You won't acknowledge him. You won't talk to him. You won't allow him to be in relationship. You don't appreciate him. You are in exile. So in order to manage estrangement from a biblical perspective, this is how God handled it. God reached out. He reached out to Adam, and then he showed up and he he managed a redemption plan. He wanted to have conversation and get clarity on what Adam was thinking and feeling. He wanted to reason. He wanted to hear. He didn't just want to feel. He didn't want to just be angry, but he wanted to talk through it. God stands at the door of everyone who's estranged, and he knocked. Scripture says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hear my voice and open up, I will come in. The estranged relationship, God is still knocking. He doesn't give up. He's like the prodigal son's father who is looking for his children, but even more in depth, he's knocking, he's calling, he's trying to get the relationship back. That's how the Bible talks about managing estrangement. So if you're a parent and your child is estranged from you, you have permission to operate in love and not parent offended. Because if you're offended, you'll say, I can't believe they're doing this to me. I'm not going to talk to them. But as a parent, you hold the bulk of the responsibility. The onus is on you. You are the mature one. God is expecting that you model his fatherhood and that you attempt to be kind. You attempt to be loving. You attempt to be supportive to your adult children. And that you talk to them in a way that's respectful, that can be reasonable, and you can negotiate with loving kindness. And then God shows us, as he is modeling and admonishing us, that he wants us to go to our brothers. Because that kind of allows the person to get it together. It gives them an opportunity to self-correct and route correct, and to say, I love you, and to help them to choose estrangement again. Because every time you reach out, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, that's you giving them an opportunity to either continue in the estrangement or to turn towards you and begin to walk in the direction of reunification. So someone has to be mature. And I know sometimes people are like, why is it always me? Why do I have to be the bigger person? I read a text that said, instead of being the bigger person, how about hanging around people who aren't so small? But in families, God does grace different ones to have more maturity and more insight. And the Bible says it's better to give than receive. So if you're able to give mercy and able to give reason, that means you have it. And so God expects much given, much required. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to be a doormat and they have permission to walk all over you. But it is saying that you've been equipped with more, so he's expecting you to do more. Just like Joseph was equipped with more gifting, so God was expecting him to expand his gift and use it to bless Israel. So you bring a witness because you really want to close that gap, especially if you're spiritual. You just can't say whatever, sarai, and I'll be worshiping at this church, you worship at that church, and I'm still saved, you're still saved. God is saying no. The strategic plan is to, after they've done something and you told them and they won't hear you, take a witness. And if they don't hear the witness, bring it before the church and let the church decide, and then exile that person and let them know that you cannot be in the family of God if you won't be in the family of brotherhood. So there are two families. I mean, there's one family, but there's also brotherhood and sisterhood in the family of God. So you're just not going to skip and have a relationship with God and not have a relationship with your siblings in the faith and be estranged from your brothers and sisters. God's not having that, and that's misinformation. Even though people do it, I've watched people open up churches with grudges and with estrangement from family members, children, and siblings. I've watched it. And God is not pleased, and that's not the order of God. That doesn't reflect kingdom. So we have to remember that and admonish our church members, our family members, and our clients, if they're spiritual, that this is not the way you course correct this. You have to bring the witnesses and you have to go through the process, not triangulate and tell people how wrong you've been and never tell the person. And then God shows that he is willing to let it go. That's hard for us because we want to be the judge, the juror, and we want to execute punishment. But God showed that he was willing to forgive humanity when he came in the form, when he gave his son, and when he gave himself, he robed himself in dirt and died on the cross and gave his life so that we can be reconciled. So he let it go. So the recipe, God's recipe for estrangement, is forgiveness. If you're holding a grudge, someone hurt you, God is saying, trust me and forgive, let it go. Forgiveness is not reconciliation, but it's being willing to let God handle the pain. It's being willing to take the pain out of your body and your mind and your cells, transfer them to God, and clear up your system so that when the person does apologize, you'll be in a position to hear them. That's what God did. He let it go. And then if there's estrangement biblically and you can't talk to the person, they won't talk to you, pray. And the reason why you pray is because you want to keep bitterness out of your heart. You don't want to be offended like, all that I did for them, I raised them and I sacrificed. Oh, they're mad at me. Well, I'm not talking to them. You don't want to be defensive and respond in that way, but you want to keep your heart in a position of like the prodigal son and like God, willing to reconcile when the time comes, willing to bridge the gap of estrangement at any opportunity. And the only thing that can keep you ready is a pure heart and keeping the grudge out and keeping the negativity out and just remaining focused on the goal and the value of family and on love and learning how to love them that don't love you back. That's a God attribute, that you can love and pray for someone who's not even talking to you. Been there, done that, have t-shirts. Taking calls from bill collectors of people who don't talk to me. Prayed for people who were sick who were not talking to me. Getting messages from other family members to pray for family members who are not talking to me, and still honestly praying for people who are not talking to me. It's a mark of spiritual maturity. And because of my profession, I know more, so I am responsible for more. And if you know more, you're going to be responsible for more. The time may come where you're not just being asked to pray for people who love you and treat you well, but that estranged family member. You know, you have to maintain your integrity and your character in the midst of someone rejecting and rejecting you, accusing you, and refusing to even have a conversation with you. You get to love them still so that your heart stays pure and you don't become estranged from them. We were estranged from God, but God was never angry and estranged from us. He wanted to have relationship. The next thing you can do is resist the guilt, because that's part of the ploy of the person that leaves in that way, not the person who leaves because they're just independent or they are embarrassed of you. Well, even the people who are leaving because they're embarrassed of you or they think they're better than you. They want to guilt you into saying you're not good enough to be in a relationship with me, or you messed up, or you hurt me, or you're not valuable, or you're a toxic person. That guilt can change how you see yourself and cause a withdrawal where you don't want to be in relationships because you think you're broke. You think something's wrong with you. You think that you cause a lot of pain. So it causes you to go into your shell and you feel guilty and you feel like, oh, I've destroyed the family. Oh, look what I've done. I set a boundary and now the family is not coming together. You can be accused of breaking up a family. And that doesn't mean that you really broke up the family, because the family consists first, remember, of the adults, the parents. They model togetherness. They model forgiveness. They model communication and reconciliation. So it takes two parties, or it takes the parents or other two parties to decide to dismantle the unit of a family. Resist false guilt. If you did nothing, you're not responsible. And that's why you need support again to reinforce, the feeling is not the fact. People can feel that you're guilty. That's not a fact. You have to begin to slow it down and examine, am I responsible for this estrangement, or is this just the person's choice? Why does someone have to be guilty? If you choose not to be in my life, why do we have to blame and guilt someone? Why can't we just amicably say, I'm choosing to build another world? You still feel rejection, but the objective is to accept that people have the choice to build different worlds. Take accountability, though. I would say this as you're dealing with estrangement, and identify, what did I do to contribute to it? Even if it's the fact that I didn't set good boundaries, even if it's the fact that I let people walk all over me for years and then I decided to speak up, even if it's the fact that, I shared someone's intimate details with someone else. Whatever it is, be willing to take your portion of the infraction and of the split and the estrangement, because it helps you to become more responsible and accountable, and it helps you to be a better person in relationships. And it helps you so when if the person comes back and you want to have the conversation, you know exactly what you did, and you can offer that as a show of forgiveness and course correction, and that you're safe to begin the process of reconciliation. We have to remember that Jesus was a unity person. He talked about the oneness of unity, and he always constantly talked about seeking peace and how we are one body, and how, he's kept us all together except for the one he lost. But it was important that he would keep us all together, and he prayed for our unity. Jesus prayed that we would be kept. And so the enemy would have us to be fragmented and be divisive. One of the things that God hates is discord. He hates division. He hates that it's sown, because he's one God and he wants his people to be one people. Estrangement doesn't please God, even though there are conditions where you may need to set estrangement to keep people safe, to keep children safe, to keep property safe. But again, that's trimming. That's not cutting. And sometimes when it is cutting, that is not even cutting. It's trimming. It's removing the person, still praying for the person, still loving the person, but not being able to be in contact. And it should hurt you that you're not able to be in contact with the person, and you still pray for them and you pray them well. God is concerned about unity. And while it's so easy to walk in estrangement and to cut it off, I just encourage you to be a cheerleader, a campaigner, to fight for the unity of the family, and to recognize estrangement's tactics, and when things are happening that will create estrangement, and to interrupt them with boundaries and with clear communication. And if you're willing and if you're committed, you can reduce the amount of estrangements in your family and in your sphere of influence. God bless you.